The most effective prisons have no gates. They require no wardens. They need only an invisible architecture, rules folded into routine, judgment folded into silence, a constant expectation that someone might be watching. Michel Foucault traced that truth with the same clarity a surgeon uses to expose a hidden tumor, not by sculpting a metaphor, but by showing how power trains us to police ourselves. Picture a hospital corridor at dawn. Nurses move in measured steps. A clock ticks. A supervisor's office looks out through a glass pane. You do not need a list of infractions posted on the wall. Every glance toward the window becomes a metric. Every slight pause is a report. Each worker learns the contours of acceptable movement. They make themselves smaller without being told. Why? Because the possibility of observation becomes internalized. The gaze need not be constant. It only needs to be plausibly there. One unseen eye rewires behavior more effectively than dozens of punished acts. Foucault called this discipline. He followed Bentham's panopticon, a circular prison where a single guard can watch many inmates without the inmates knowing when they are seen, and he flipped it into a theory of modern life. Institutions design visibility into a mechanism for control. Visibility becomes regulation, regulation becomes habit. Consider an experiment you've probably never watched but recognize in yourself. People are shown a line and then a group of actors all say a wrong answer. 30% of real participants agree with the group at least once. The explanation is blunt. Being observed, or merely feeling observed, bends truth to consensus. The mind adjusts. The body conforms. Conformity is not a failure of intelligence. It is a refined social reflex, an economy of safety in which one's inner compass folds to the perceived collective. Now move the scene. A young woman sits at a kitchen table, rewriting the same message to her boss. Delete, rephrase, delete, add a comma, remove it. She is not nervous about her words. She is rehearsing a self-portrait to align with an imagined audience, polite, competent, small enough not to threaten. Her edits accumulate into a character she will begin to inhabit. The message is tiny, the architecture is vast, history supplies harsher examples, schools that stamped punctuality into bodies, military drills that converted fear into reflex, prisons that replaced rebellion with a timetable. Foucault mapped how these practices become the soft scaffolding of society. Once discipline migrates from the outside inward, you no longer need a baton. You carry it in the shape of your silence. Surprise, the same mechanism operates on pleasure. Social media invented a new panopticon. Likes and follower counts are not neutral metrics, they are orchestrated feedback loops that teach you which gestures are safe, which opinions will be rewarded, and which faces must remain hidden. You stand at a mirror that reports to an anonymous jury. You will posture, you will curate. Shame arrives faster than applause, and both teach the same lesson. Visibility is a currency whose exchange rate is measured in your appetite for approval. This is not merely about being cautious. It is about identity formation. Children learn to swallow parts of themselves when parents look away with disappointment. A company's KP becomes a player's life goal. A religious community's silence about doubt becomes the scaffolding for a whole inner life. Every institution that demands visibility invents a grammar of acceptable gestures, and learners become native speakers. Over years, the grammar hardens into character. The mechanism is simple and cruel. First, define a gaze. Name the transgression. Make consequences plausible. Then wait. People will internalize the anticipation of punishment more effectively than punishment itself. Anticipation is cheaper, quieter, and more permanent. It does the labor of surveillance without the expense of keeping eyes on everybody at all times. Ask yourself, when did you last change a small truth to keep peace? When did you delete a story, soften a joke, pretend not to notice? Notice the tiny economies you practice to avoid a glare. Notice how you rehearse apology in advance. Notice how you measure love by the absence of shame. These are the corridors and glass panes of your own making. There is a deeper sting. Internal prisons do not only prevent harm, they also narrow possibility. Self-surveillance compresses ambition into acceptable shapes. Creativity becomes a negotiated risk. Intimacy becomes calibrated to avoid fallout. The person who wins through caution loses the capacity to surprise themselves. Freedom shrinks not because walls rose, but because the map of the world inside the head became smaller. Yet the internal guard is not invincible. It learned the language of authority, and like any language, it can be relearned. Silence can be interrupted. Small acts of uncoded behavior, saying the unsanctioned truth in a family dinner, not liking the post everyone else praises, leaving the meeting when applause is expected, are practice in dishonoring the gaze. They are not heroic once. They are habits that become permission for further refusal. But here is the final uncomfortable observation: refusal is also visible. A transgressive act, when performed, becomes a new object to be judged. In escaping one architecture, you might be entering another. The only escape that guarantees no new prison is the choice to change the terms by which you measure yourself, rather than merely swapping audiences. So, what is the truth Foucault asked us to see? Power does not always accumulate at the top. It flows through everyday routines and settles as a quiet self-discipline. It trains you to be your own jailer. That realization is less liberating than it sounds. Knowing the mechanics of the trap does not dissolve the trap. It gives you language to name it, and naming is the first precarious step toward refusing to be watched in the way you were taught to be. Look at your hands. They have learned to clasp themselves before speaking. Which parts of your life are being watched by a gaze that does not exist? Which habits are simply rehearsals for an audience you no longer want to serve? The question lingers because the answer is not elimination, but negotiation, and negotiations are always messy.